Okay, welcome everybody. So let's start the Kubewarden office hours. Just as a reminder, the Kubewarden office hours is an opportunity for everybody, that is interested in Kubewarden to gather here and have a live discussion and also see what's ongoing and what are the future efforts. And everybody is welcome here. This is a safe environment. Before we started recording and you were seeing this, we asked everybody if they decided if they were okay with that. So here we are. The rules, as always, is always be nice with each other. Everybody's invited to take any notes on all the notes about these things. Everybody's invited to have some topics put on the list of things to talk. And feel free to report any concerns to the organizers. In this case, it's me, I'm talking, but Flavio is the one listed as organizer, and also we have Olivier. They are in the Kubewarden channel, so you can find them there instead of just naming the emails, which maybe makes more sense. So welcome. Today we have some topics. We have 3 topics, and well, maybe I can start with the first one if everything looks okay. Okay, then let's start with the first one. The first one is the Linux Foundation Mentorship for Kubewarden. We are proud to say that Kubewarden is taking part in the Linux Foundation Mentorship because as part of being in on CNCF, we are able to be part of this mentorship. This mentorship is a 2-month mentorship. It's a paid mentorship for the mentees. The payment comes from the Linux Foundation, and they are going to be working happily on some tasks. The tasks are related to the policies and the SDK feature parity. So maybe if I can just share the screen super fast, which is here. Yes, here we are. There's a lot of mentorships. These are the ones that we are dealing with in Kubewarden. One is about enhancements to policies. And you can see that we have Jose, that is not writing this call, as a mentor, and myself. And we have one of our mentees, which in this case is Shiva Gaide. I hope that I'm pronouncing the name, his name correctly. And yeah, they seem to be super motivated. This would be for the policy enhancements. And then we have the other one, which is about the feature parity of the SDKs. Also, again, with Jose and me as mentees. And in this case, we have Khaled Demara, also motivated for these things. Also they seem. And we are super looking forward for that. It's going to be 2 months, 8 weeks. It's going to be short in a sense, but we hope that they get a feeling on how open source works and how it is to work with us in the Kubewarden team and so on. So yeah, that would be it.
Welcome, folks. Looking forward to have you around.
Yep. Okay, that's the first announcement, which we are super happy with. Yeah, then I suppose we can talk about what are we currently busy with. Flavio, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure. So during the last weeks, we have been working on this feature called context-aware policies. Context-aware policies are like regular policies, but at evaluation time, they can ask for information. Basically, they can query the Kubernetes API to get some extra information to be used at evaluation time. So, for example, you could write a policy that is evaluating the creation of ingress resources. And instead of just looking at the information that are related with the ingress object that is about to be created, you can also request to the Kubernetes API server what are the other ingress objects that are already defined inside of the cluster, so that your policy can go and do some checks and make sure that there is no conflict between the ingress objects that already exist inside of the cluster and the one that is about to be created. So this is a feature that, to be honest, we already had, but it was just documented, and it was in an alpha state. Okay, it was the first iteration to just show that it would have been possible to create context-aware policies, but this first iteration was limited in different ways. First of all, we had an hard-coded list of resources that were made available to context-aware policies. That included namespaces, services, and ingresses, if I'm not mistaken. What does it mean? It means that if you want to write a context-aware policy that requires information about config maps, for example, then with a previous implementation of this feature, that would not have been possible. And we didn't want to just hard-code any kind of Kubernetes resource that someone might need. We wanted to keep everything flexible so that, for example, a policy author could write a context-aware policy querying a custom resource definition, something that we don't even know what could be. You know, it could be like a cert manager, certificate, or I don't know. There are many CRDs, as you know. So that's the first thing that we changed it. So with this new implementation, as you will see, you can basically have a policy query any kind of Kubernetes resource in a dynamic fashion. The other thing we wanted to improve was the security implication around this feature. What do I mean with that? So when you perform, as you will see, when you perform a query against a Kubernetes API server, you are doing that as a user. It could be your user, you have a kubeconfig, or in the case of a context-aware policies, the query is done using the service account that is being used by the policy server that is hosting your policy. So what does it mean? It means that maybe an attacker could leverage the high privileges of a service account of Kubewarden, high privileges compared to his own privileges. So I'm a regular user of a cluster. The administrator of a cluster gave me a really well-scoped access to the cluster, but the policy server, it requires maybe it has been granted a higher access to the cluster. Maybe the policy server can query for config maps inside of all namespaces, while myself, the attacker, can query for config maps only inside of the namespace that I have access to. So we don't want an attacker to write a policy and deploy a policy that is stealing this kind of information, you know, is leveraging the service account of a policy server to gain access to resources that he doesn't own. In the previous implementation we were just querying everything, all the namespaces, all the services, all the ingresses, and everybody could, you know, any policy could have access to this information. Now this is being changed. We adopted a design that is similar to the one used by the mobile apps that you are installing on your smartphones. When you install a mobile app, you have a list of resources that the mobile app is requesting access to. It could be your address book, it could be your location, and so when you, for example, install a Torchlight application, you know, and you see that this Torch application requires access to your address book, you probably, you know, there is something fishy going on with that, and so you move away from that. Also, if an application, the Torchlight application, doesn't say that it needs access to your location, and then at runtime it tries to get access to your location, your Android or iOS device will prevent you know, this information to be shared with the app. So we basically copied this model, which is pretty straightforward. What does it mean? I will share the screen with you so we can also go through a quick demo and make everything maybe easier to understand. So
yeah, that sounds super nice. No, a little demo maybe makes it super clear. But yeah, if you say mobile phone, yep, perfect.
All right. So this is this is a demo policy I wrote. So the first thing is as a policy author, you have to somehow inform the consumers of your policy about what kind of resources your policy is going to consume. This is an information that we add to this new annotation, which is called context-aware resources. There was this context-aware field that was from the previous implementation. Now this has been dropped, but no worries because everything is backward compatible. So everything will just work fine. And as you can see, this policy requires access to namespaces. All right. And so what this policy perform, I will show that to you. We have a namespace called a task policy, which has these labels. All right. So this is the default label added by Kubernetes, but then there is this special label that I created, which is called propagate.something. So this policy is evaluating the creation of pods, and anytime you create a pod, it will query the API server to get information about the namespace where this pod is about to be created. Then it will look into the labels of that namespace, and then it will make sure that all the labels that start with propagate are propagated into the pod. So this is a mutating policy. If you try to create a pod that doesn't have a hello key, it will create that. Well, during propagation also, the policy strips out this prefix, just to be fancy. So the policy tries to do this information. So let me show you how we can run this. I'm going to use kwctl run. We introduced this new flag, which is called allow context aware. Well, first of all, let me try to run it without this flag. So here we have a recording of a creation event for a pod that doesn't have this hello world label. So let me run it. As you can see, everything fails. First of all, kwctl tells you that this is a policy that requires access to Kubernetes resources. By default, we do not want to give just free access to Kubernetes resources, and so we are going to prevent access to any resource. All right, and you can see here that there is actually an error going on because our policy, the guest, tried to access the V1 namespace resource, but it doesn't have access to it. And so the violation, is reported to the user. Now, this is kwctl, it is working this way. Policy server, which I'm not going to demonstrate today, maybe next time, is going to work in a really similar way. What we have to do is to use, as recommended down there, we have to use this allow context aware flag, all right? So before doing that, we should use kwctl inspect in order to look into the policy metadata to see what kind of resources this is going to access. Oh, this is a policy. It does, what I described, and it requires access to namespaces. That seems legitimate to me. So I'm going to run the same command as before. This time with this allow context aware flag, which basically says, I'm going to trust what the policy author wrote inside of the metadata, and I will grant access to all the resources that are mentioned inside of the policy metadata. Policy server will work in a different way because we don't want to trust what the policy author put inside of the metadata. So you will have to be explicit about that through the custom resource definition, but next time. So let me run it again. And so as you can see, this time there is no error. There is still the warning because now we are granting access to all the Kubernetes resources mentioned by the policy metadata. And you can see that the request is allowed and there is a patch, so the policy mutated something. I'm going to rerun everything, and I will use JQ to look into the patch portion of the response. And you can see here that the mutation is about adding to the metadata labels of a pod this value, a key with hello and a word as value. And yes, and it is working. Now let's try to run the same policy again, but this time we have another incoming request. This time it's a pod that has all the labels that we already have defined inside of the namespace. And as you can see, it is accepted this time without any patch. So there was no mutation taking place this time because the pod already had everything. All right. Now I want to show you what happens if a policy author is going to try to access something that is not mentioned inside of, that is not allowed. In this case, it's something that is not mentioned inside of the policy metadata. If you remember, I've shown to you before, the policy metadata states that the policy needs access to the namespace only object. Now, this policy, it has a configuration that by default, that has this evil Boolean flag. By default, evil is set to false. And when it's set to false, nothing bad happens. But now I'm going to run it in with evil mode activated. And let's see what is going to happen. So the policy was granted access to all the Kubernetes resources mentioned by the metadata, which means only namespaces. This is some output coming from the policy. This is the emoji for evil, for supervillain, I discovered. So evil mode is turned on. And as you can see, now we get an error. And the error is this one, which is, the policy tried to access something that it is not allowed to. Yeah, you can see here, resource requested. It was v1 secret. So the policy was trying to read some secret from some namespace, and this is not allowed. The policy has been allowed access only to namespaces, and that's why everything failed. Now you might be wondering, I still get the request accepted. You see, it's accepted. There is a mutation. Why? I mean, there is an error over there. Well, that's because when I'm running into evil mode, my policy tries to access a secret, and this API call inside of the policy fails, and I get an error inside of the policy. But since I know that I've been trying to do something evil, I'm not, as a policy author, I'm not propagating this error. I'm just hiding this error, and so there is no output coming up. But as we said in the beginning, the Kubewarden runtime is listening for this kind of nasty events and is going to report them. And as you can see here, I get a log about that. So if we are using some tracing collector, we will have this kind of error stored and made visible to the operator of the cluster. And so yeah, this is it for today, I would say.
That's great, I have to say. Nice demo. Yeah, I don't have much questions. I was thinking while we were talking about this. So we have the policy, that declares the resources that it can access or not. And I was thinking it would be possible even to write a different policy that looks and validates cluster admission policies or admission policies, so they cannot access specific resources or whatever, or that would be configured in the policy server, no?
This is configured in the policy server, so there is no need to introduce any other policy. So next month, let's show how cluster admission policy has been changed in order to reflect, this feature.
Perfect. Yeah, simpler. Okay. Well, many thanks.
Yeah.
Then
I have to drop in around 5 minutes. I'm sorry, because I have to join another meeting. So yeah.
And
thanks.
see you around, I suppose. Yeah. Thanks. Okay, then I suppose we go with the next thing on the list, which is UI end-to-end test. And for that we have here Martin and Jordan. Folks, how do you want to proceed with this? I would be super happy to hear about it.
Martin has actually been the one on the forefront of the end-to-end tests, so I think I'll let him do the demos.
Yeah, sure. I cannot share the screen. I'm on Wayland, so I don't think it's possible, but I can tell you about it. Maybe someone else can share. So this week we worked on some automation for UI testing. We have a UI that we want to make sure it's always installable. We can it will start as an extension can be installed. Then after we install extension, we can install the Kubewarden and start policy server, and the default policies or recommended policies are started too. So we added some GitHub action to make sure this all works. This GitHub action runs nightly. So far, it's passing quite fine. It's not perfect yet. I need to fix some shortcomings I realized are there when I played with it. So export of the logs is a bit broken, or the output in the output you cannot see all the actions. By default, it shows just dots and number of tests it runs. But the main idea is to see it's still working fine. So before we release, we have a RC candidate, and we test on this RC. And after we release, we trigger a manual job, and we make sure it's released just fine. Yep, mostly that's about it. Next coming weeks, I plan to improve this to add more tests. So one big idea is to add tests for deployment of all the policies. So we have, I think, 26 or 27 of them currently, and I would like to make sure all of them are can be deployed in some basic settings. This week I tried to do this manually, and we found a couple of issues that are already on reported on GitHub issues, and Jordan will try to fix them soon. So UI is getting better. It's there, and it's improving.
Yeah, it's.
Yes.
I mean, what can I say? I feel the same. The UI is in a really good spot thanks to both of you, and having automated tests, for the UI with Playwright is a super nice thing to have. So yeah, congrats. Yeah, sorry if I cut you there. Do you guys want to talk about anything else about this topic?
No, that's all from me.
No, but it does give me a nice peace of mind whenever I make new builds. Sometimes I'm not sure if it's always going to work, but now I know for sure.
Yeah, that sounds good. And it's really indeed good. Okay, I was thinking, I remembered also that we didn't talk about the RFC. So Flavio was talking now about the context-aware policies, which is a change in the stack, in the building of the whole thing. And normally we do those things by achieving consensus by writing an RFC, and then we review that. And after we have some idea on how the implementation is going to be, we get into the implementation. So just in case, I suppose I'm going to share the screen. And if I can, my browser is preventing access to the share screen. Maybe I'm already sharing. No. Anyway, we have the RFC repo. We have Kubewarden -RFC repo, and there you can find the RFC 15 that corresponds with the context-aware policies. Okay. And now would be the time to talk about a little change on KubeCtl, where we are adding one command to the KubeCtl scaffold. But I really want to share, but I cannot again. And I was sharing before. Anyway.
Maybe I could share for you.
Yes, there's not much to share. You could go, for example, to the RFC, I think it's 14. Yep, it's 14. And meanwhile, I can explain about it. So if you are all aware, maybe that on ArtifactHub, since Kubewarden is a CNCF project, we have there our Helm charts, and we have also policies. Right now, the submitted policies to ArtifactHub are the ones coming from the Kubewarden team, but there are community policies that already exist and are not published in ArtifactHub. And maybe one of the reasons is because it's a bit cumbersome, no, to publish there. One needs to first go to ArtifactHub and then say I want to publish this repo, and then one needs a specific metadata file on the repo.
Where can I find this?
It should be inside of the RFC folder. That's where you are. So yep, there's the number 14. And yeah, so you can read the RFC if you're interested. Basically, for each policy, we have a metadata.yaml, and we were crafting by hand the ArtifactHub package.yaml needed for ArtifactHub. And the idea is just to extrapolate all the things needed for ArtifactHub from the metadata.yaml. And that is going to be possible by the new command that has been added to Kwctl and is going to be released, which is Kwctl scaffold ArtifactHub. And with that and the GitHub actions that are yet to come, all the templates for the policies and all the policies from the community and so on will have ArtifactHub package.yaml automatically created. So then the people can decide if to submit to ArtifactHub or not, and everything is simpler for the community people writing the policies. That would be it. You can see that there's basically, there's an equivalence between the fields on metadata.yaml and what happens to them on ArtifactHub, the package.yaml, and that informs the implementation. So yeah, that would be it.
Very nice.
And then, yep.
I think this is a great improvement because before I had manually updating this was quite a pain.
Yep, I look forward to having this already released on the next release, to be honest. But yeah, it's a nice thing. It's a small change, but I think it's nice. And with this, we go to the last topic that we have for today, which is that Kubewarden as a project would be present in KubeCon Europe Amsterdam. That's in April, so more or less in a month and a week. And we will be there because by being part of the CNCF, we have the rights, we have the honors to be on the so-called project pavilion of CNCF. So you could see their Kubewarden booth that is going to be booth by me so far, and it's going to be done on the afternoons. So if you go by the afternoons, we can share things about Kubewarden. You can see some examples about Kubewarden and maybe some goodies. And also, we're going to be present there for the booth crawl. So if you're attending, see you there. And that's it, guys. For the people seeing this recording and so on, and many thanks for joining, and for you guys also, many thanks for allowing me to be your host. Enjoy.
Thank you for
around.
hosting, Victor.
Ciao.
So,
Bye-bye.